Two guys either side of 50 with one dream to achieve middle-aged sporting glory. This is the Missing Links Golf Show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Missing Links Golf Show. An incredibly exciting episode that we've got happening today. We'll explain all about that in just a moment, but I'm Steve Hinks. I'm joined by Andy Walker, my partner in crime, long-term friend. Andy Walker, welcome.
G'day, Mr. Hinks. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm very excited about today because whilst we're doing the welcomes, there's a big welcome to you, but there's a welcome that we've got to give to a very special guest. We're joined by an expert in sports psychology who focuses specifically on golf and someone who hopefully can answer some of the many, many questions that we were asking in our previous episode when we talked a little bit about the mental game. So we've got Neale Smith on the line as well. Neale, welcome to the Missing Links Golf Show.
G'day, guys.
How are you doing there?
It's early evening in California and very pleasant winter weather here.
Fantastic. First international guest, Andy Walker. How do you feel about that?
I am really excited. I mean, as you know, we've had a guest previous on the show, but the first international guest. I think this really this is consistent with our international audience that we now have almost across the globe, you could say.
We're a big deal in Mexico, Neale.
I was very enticed by the compensation package of a hat and a ball marker. So how could I turn that down?
As I said, we're nothing if not generous here at the Missing Links Golf Show. But wonderful to have you on board. And I think for a good place to start is maybe to give you the floor for a moment and just tell everybody who you are, where you're from and what you do.
Well, from Bega, down on the south coast of New South Wales originally. Grew up on a farm, Bega Primary, Bega High. Typical country kid, was into a bunch of sport, was pretty good at a lot of them. End up specializing as a track and field athlete, and specifically the jumps, mostly high jump and a little bit of triple jump and some long jumping, but mostly high jumping. Got to a pretty high level, was on the junior national team and won the Australian All Schools. Was on a good trajectory to possibly maybe get on a Commonwealth Games team, or dream goal was Olympic Games team. But then tore my Achilles, rehabbed, kept coming back, and it was okay, but not great. While I was rehabbing, I could chip and putt a lot and kind of got the golf bug. So I basically quit high jumping when I was about 20 in the middle of my undergrad in Sydney, and started to pursue golf more seriously. Went to Ku-ring-gai College of Advanced Education, which is now, I guess, UTS in Linfield. Great bunch of people to be with there. Good degree there, B.Ed PE, and did a sports psychology class there that I really liked. Then I worked in Sydney for a year. I saved up some money to go to grad school in the US, and then did a master's degree in applied sports psychology at Cal State Fullerton under a guy called Dr. Ken Ravizza. And he was one of the most experienced guys in the US and had done a lot of work in college and professional baseball as well as Olympic teams. So I had an amazing mentor there and a good experience. And then when I finished graduate school, decided to turn pro. Was on a small mini tour in Southern California, really not having much success for a few months, really not playing that great at all. Changed my grip on the range at my course, Alta Vista, one day, stopped hooking it and shot 62 the next day. So
wow, so it's that simple.
I wish it was that for everyone, but then I went to a mini tour event the next week, shot 62 again and won by 5. And then I was really starting to play great, where I could hit it as hard as I want and not hook it. I always used to overhook it, and I stopped hooking it. So Q school rolled around. I got through first couple stages, first stage by a couple, second stage on the number. And then at finals, I birdied 5 of the first 6 holes and was in the lead the whole rest of the tournament. So next thing, I'm out of grad school 9 months, and I'm on the PGA Tour. So
fantastic.
I'm living proof that if you do the right things, you can improve quickly. but also I didn't have a strong PGA Tour career. I played professionally for 10 years, but only had 1 year on the PGA Tour and spent another 9 years trying to get back out there playing Australian Tour, Canadian Tour. I consider my 10 years of playing my PhD in applied sports psychology.
Yeah, for sure. For
sure. I sort of feel, Neale, that while we're talking about sports psychology, that we've got something in common in that my very poor shot is a big snap hook.
It's true.
And I'm struggling to get rid of it. I've engaged a coach and trying to work through getting rid of that snap hook. But yeah, I feel like sometimes it's all good. And then the next time I go out, like I played on Saturday, I just played 9 holes on Saturday, and every shot was a snap hook, and it's very frustrating. It's one of the worst shots in golf, I think.
Yeah, well, especially if you have some power, it's bounding away into the trouble.
Yes.
Yeah. But part of developing your mental game is, along with good coaching, is learning what to attend to. Like, what do you place your focus on to stop hocking it? Like obviously you want to hit, you set the intention of what the shot you're trying to hit, but then go through the process of, if I attend to these cues, thoughts and feelings, I'm giving myself the best chance to make the motion I want to create the shot flight that I want. Part of the journey with the mental game is understanding what's a technical error and what's attention or focus error. Because if you set a clear intention of what you wanted to do, you felt good over the ball, you made a trusting swing with the thoughts and feels you've been working on, and then you hook it, that's a technique error. So then you can go to your coach with like information. So here's one of the key points is learning how to create untainted feedback with what you're working on. Because if you're a bit scared of the right miss, if you're a right-hander, you're not that comfortable over the ball, the swing's not that free, and then you hook it, well, that's really a mental game error. You weren't really ready to go and you hit it anyway.
So a couple of things that, and certainly Steve and I have talked about this previously, and it's one of the areas that I think I really need to work on, and it's more so when I'm having quite a good day, good round. I get to about the sort of 14th, 15th, and I go through my pre-shot routine, standing over the ball, feeling like I've got a good mental routine and feel comfortable over the ball. And then all of a sudden it gets to the top of my swing and I sort of go, this is a pretty important shot.
Oh no.
And I really struggle with that a lot of the time. It's and it's not necessarily a conscious thought, it's more of an awareness. Of going, yep, good swing thoughts, feeling comfortable over the ball, get to the top of my swing and go, this is pretty important, this shot.
Which, that's a pretty amazing that you can have that many thoughts at the top of your backswing.
It's a bit scary, isn't it?
Yes, no, that's quite gifted, to be honest.
Yeah,
but it's a classic case of something
thoughts
jumping in, conscious or unconscious, because the things that mess things up are either not setting a clear intention or an intention you believe, stuff jumping in, which is usually negative, don't go here, don't go there, or don't mess this up if you're having a good round, or this is an important shot, all things that are unrelated to the task, but along with that, because you go from appropriate focus to distracted focus, and the tension nearly always goes up. So you go from appropriate tension levels to too high, then that affects the motor program, and obviously the swing runs off, and next thing you've hit a bad shot.
Yeah. Distracted focus. That's very. I feel that is where I am at the top of my swing. I feel like I'm focused, but I just get this distraction.
Right. So if I was working with you, we'd be working on strategies to fill your mind with more positive focus cues. Like, what do I want to feel like at the top? Is it better for you to have a position cue there, or a rhythm cue, a target cue in your third eye? Like, there's multiple ways we'd have to explore, but the goal is to fill your mind with something that's likely to be helpful rather than giving space for the distraction to jump in.
Yeah. Look, I've always felt like I'm at my best when I have one maybe 2 swing thoughts throughout my swing. That's sort of where I feel as though my sweet spot is. However, in saying that, I also have read a little bit about with Dr. Bob Rotella's book, Golf's Not a Game of Perfect, and he goes back and talks about Bobby Jones. And Bobby Jones apparently didn't have anything in his mind at all when he's swinging, and I just can't understand how you completely blank your mind out.
Yeah, but look, in my experience with players, you've got players that play inside out and other players that play outside in. So let me explain that. So an inside out player is likely to be pretty into their setup, the motion and the mechanics of it to produce the ball flight they want, as opposed to an outside in player where they're really into the target and the ball flight. That influences the setup and then the motion. So you kind of need to know which category you're in, because then the kind of cues and what you work on needs to be in the category you're likely to be most comfortable with.
And how would you figure that out? Yeah.
That's kind of, just with my clients, it's like how they talk about golf, how they talk about shot shaping, how do they talk about swings. I have a process that I take clients through when I meet them and on the range and when we play. So, and I just get a sense, just through doing it for years, I've got a sense of what that's like. But like for example, Mark Leishman's a classic outside in player, where I helped him for 7 or 8 years. He would all his thoughts and attention would be in front of the ball, very little on his technique, a lot of about the ball flight and the windows he wanted to start it through in terms of the start line and where he wanted to finish. It was very target ball flight related, very little technical. Whereas when I was helping Hunter Mahan, he was completely the opposite. You could just drop a curtain in front of him. He'd get into the setup, make the backswing and follow through feels, and he would flush it. So both really great players, but totally different attentional styles. And Bob Rotella's book is excellent for simplifying things, but I think there's maybe some other ways to do it. It's like the aim small, miss small. I'd say half the players I work with, that tightens them up, the smaller their target. So again, you've got to know your way, as opposed to, I don't think there's just one way to do this.
That's a really interesting point. One of the other ones, sort of a little bit aligned to what Andy Walker was just talking about. I've been finding lately, I've been working a lot on trying to separate the thinking element of a shot from the execution of the shot. So I think it was explained like think box, play box by, I can't remember who the authors were that came up with that methodology. And it's been good, but I find that I'm then second guessing myself a little bit when I'm then getting over the ball and starting to think about all of the, particularly putting, all of the various ways that it could miss. They're obviously negative thoughts and they're not good thoughts. But I feel like I've got myself set well before going to the shot, thought it through. Yep, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to execute. Then get over the ball and then try and be more of an athletic mindset to hit the shot. But then some of those negatives float in at that point. Please help.
Well, because the Think Box, Play Box, it was developed by Lynn Marriott and Pia Nilsson. They were the Vision 50. They're the Vision 54 people, and they rose to prominence by coaching Annika Sorenstam, which honestly is an amazing mental game story. Because I don't know if you ever read this or heard this about Annika. She purposely would bogey and double bogey holes at the end of junior tournaments to finish high but never win. So she'd regularly finish between second and fifth at these tournaments, but would never win, and was a lot of mistakes late at tournaments. So both Lynn and Pia were helping the Swedish national team, and they could see the pattern through interviewing and working with her and Annika getting confidence in them. She eventually shared with them that she was petrified of public speaking. So she would purposely make mistakes so she'd have a good week, but she wouldn't have to do the victory speech.
That's amazing.
That's an amazing story, right? Because she gets through that and she works on that, she gets all the way to number one in the world, and she's like one of a Hall of Fame women's player, and she regularly works for NBC and other as a commentator now. So in terms of her journey from being a petrified teen, to it's a great role model in that no matter what your challenge is, if you do the right things over time, you can improve it.
I think that's really interesting that she's bringing something, well, what's really non-golf related in that a fear of public speaking and bringing that into her golf game. I find that really interesting.
Yeah, but I think in my experience, confidence is situational. Like, just think about the skills in golf. Often we're more confident in one of the skills than one of the other skills. And think about things in life where some things we're quite confident in and other things we're not. So I don't think, like when they say, I'll be confident, well, yeah, obviously sport's easier when you are, but most athletes struggle with lack of confidence in something at some point. So the whole being in the zone, I'm like, it's great, but it's pretty overrated in golf. It's rare and it's involuntary, so I don't think it's about really trying to achieve the zone. It's about more managing the other stuff better.
So when you're talking about self-perception, Neale, and we've or confidence, I should say, Steve and I have talked a lot about self-perception, and that a lot of people struggle to break past that. Okay, well, I'm an 18 marker, and that's how they perceive themselves. So trying to get past that and getting down to whether it be 10. I mean, I'm 4.5 at the moment, wanting to get back down to scratch again. I know that I've got the skill base to be able to do that, but trying to get on the golf course and having the confidence and the self-perception of being a scratch marker is a totally different thing.
Yeah, but it's about creating the vision of who you want to be and how you want to play. So it's being clear in that goal setting process and that vision setting process of, this is the level I'd like to play at, and this is the kind of player I'd like to be. So it's being clear with that. But also, look, I grew up in Australia. It's not a great country for, especially with Australian males, about how to talk to yourself and believe in yourself, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's pretty self-deprecating. Like half of my work's been with Australian male touring pros, and nearly always we've got to work on the self-talk, which leads to the self-perception. They complain about their confidence being low, but you hear them talk to themselves out loud, and it's pretty brutal, let alone what they're saying to themselves that we can't hear. So I'm not saying it's the same for everyone, but my experience there, it's Australian men are pretty rough on themselves when it doesn't go well, and if it does go well, I just got lucky.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And when you walk off a golf course into a club room in any course around the country, and you'll hear a lot of stories about what went wrong, you very rarely hear someone sitting at the bar saying, "Hey, I really nailed it up 8, and geez, my chipping was on fire."
Well,
and similarly,
imagine this conversation. So, like yesterday, it was really cold and windy at my club. I really played beautifully. I shot 66. I had six birdies and an eagle, 1 bogey. Shot 6 under. I really played well. Now, if I went into the club in Australia and they say, "Hey, Neale, how'd you play?" They says, "Oh, I really played beautiful golf today. I was really happy with myself." I'm like, think about how that would be perceived, right?
Totally.
Right. You'd probably get hammered pretty quick there.
Yeah.
So, but honestly, I was really happy with myself, and I played beautiful golf, and I was really, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. It's a bit like you'll often find you might drain a long putt. Your playing partners will say, "Oh, great putt," and you go, "Oh, yeah, look, geez, lucky it hit the hole because it had some pace on it." Like very rarely do you stand there and go, "Thanks, I actually, I really feel that was an excellent putt as well."
Yeah, well, but again, I think that's a cultural thing, because it's and I'm not saying America's better than Australia. It's not. It's like there's just different cultural influences no matter where you're at, and like at some of the mini tour events, when I first started playing, you'd see the guys on the range and you'd see their technique pretty average, and you go and get beaten by them by 5 or 6 shots every week, and it'd be like, God, but they were so confident in what they were doing, and we were so fragile, and so, but having lived here for 30 years, I can see why there's quite a few good American golfers. There's a good support system for that. Plus, there's a good mindset development process of growing confidence here. Because the classic case in Australia would be, say, if you won the tournament, your speech needs to go something along the lines of, "Oh, look, I'm happy to have won today. Billy probably should have won, but I just got lucky at the end, and thanks very much for having me." Imagine if you went up there and say, "Oh."
Yeah, you hear that a lot in team sports, don't you? When someone's being interviewed and they've scored, say cricket, they've scored 100, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I was really helped out by the bowlers though. Like they really restricted the opposition to whatever score, and they deprecate their own achievement by complimenting other players in the team. Oh yeah, it's a team sport, and really sort of bring their own performance down."
Yeah, and I understand in interviews, sometimes athletes, especially golfers, are pretty guarded about what they say, and there's a generic response to a lot of questions. But I hope that's not the narrative they're creating in their own head, not in the interview. Because say you have a good day, you need to process that just as much as a day that doesn't go well. And there's lessons in both. And if you're trying to grow confidence and become a better player, you better give yourself a pat on the back at the right time for playing well.
So that raises another little stat that I stumbled across that, and I don't think this is golf specific. I think this is probably across, the human experience more broadly, but particularly in golf, we have a tendency to remember a negative experience something like 8 times more clearly or more likely than remembering a positive experience. Is that?
Yeah, well, it's partly the game. Like think about practice. If you hit a bad shot, you just grab another ball and you try and get it right. Right? There's very little consequence for making a mistake in practice. Now there is in golf, and especially tournament golf, like mistakes, there are consequences to that. But also, look, think about the world of self-reinforcement. There's positive, neutral, and negative, right? So most players, especially Australian golfers, are very good at negative reinforcement after a bad shot. There'll be an 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 for that. All right? They'll be pretty rough on themselves, and they'll get down on that pretty hard. Now, after a good shot, there'll be a 0, 1, or 2 in terms of the positive self-reinforcement for the good shot. So often touring pros live in the world of neutral to negative reinforcement. I'm like, it's, honestly, in my experience, you've got to understand reinforcement correctly and how to apply it correctly. There is a time for negative reinforcement, but it's generally used at the wrong time by most players. The time to get on yourself is when you're not clear on the intention, you don't feel good over the ball, you're totally distracted, then you hit it anyway, and then you wonder why you made a mistake. That's the time to be pretty rough on yourself. It's not when you felt good over the ball, made a trusting swing, and it didn't work out.
So process related rather than outcome related.
Yes, absolutely. Because look, you can only control in golf till the ball leaves the face. As soon as the ball's off the club face, it's out of your hands. And then you just pray to the golf gods and hope for a smooth journey. But there's so much that you can do in terms of increasing the predictability of your ball flight by understanding yourself, your tendencies, and how to deliver the club correctly. If you deliver the club correctly and you hit the ball correctly, the ball's likely to fire somewhat reasonably. So it's always about, how do I do this in the best possible way to deliver the club in this situation? And it's learning those repetitive good thoughts and feels and getting those down over and over and over and over, and knowing then how that changes tension-wise and rhythm-wise when it's going poorly or when it's going well.
Yeah, and that's one of the questions I think that we had on the list, is talking about, I'm jumping around a little bit here, so apologies, because I do want to jump back to a preparation question after this, but we're talking about the when things get a roll on. So we've spoken about negative thoughts over particular shots. Then there's other times when a round feels like it's getting away from you, and comments like, "It's one of those days. I just don't have it today." Um, you know, "Oh, I can't get off the tee today." Whatever. I think you know what I mean. Like that, those sorts of phrases that can completely derail a round, an entire round, versus other times when you might be having a good round and you maybe get that tightening of fear of success or whatever the case might drive that then derails the good round and the classic choke. So I know they're two big topics, but what are your sort of thoughts on ways around avoiding those moments?
Well, a lot of my professional life has been working with touring pros, and they work with a caddy. So often, so we're working with the player on their self-talk and their talk, that how they talk to themselves, the caddy, and what they express after shots. So when they're pretty rough on themselves and when it's going well, I ask them, if your caddy said this to you, what would you do? Oh, I'd fire them straight away.
Mm.
And I'm like, so you agree it's pretty rough and it's not pretty negative and it's not that helpful? Oh, yeah. Now, if he said it, I would fire him. But they've given themselves permission to talk to themselves that way, right?
Mm.
Yeah. So it's a learning a different narrative of when to be hard on yourself in terms of process, how to reinforce it correctly for good process, bad result, but also how to reinforce it for good process, good result. So it's trying to break things down a little bit like that. Yeah, because like the classic, like golf's already hard enough. So I can't get off the tee today. Like you're just setting yourself up for failure right there. So a better narrative would look, an honest narrative would look, I've been currently struggling off the tee, real, but this is what I'm going to do on this tee shot to try and help that. So I'm going to pick a more defined target, or I'm going to have a slightly different swing thought and feel within the same category that I've been working on. I'm going to then be open to doing it better with a slightly better process and or thought process. So rather than just giving into, I'm not getting off the tee today, at least try to do it better, you know?
It's so seductive, that
remember
feeling
the
of...
whole, remember as a kid, like the Etch-a-Sketch.
Yes.
Right. It's a great concept for the mental game. Right. So, because you're trying to create this pretty picture of what you're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
And like good or bad, guess what you have to do? It has to be a clean slate every time.
I love that.
Right.
That's
because think about when it's going poorly or good, it's not a clean slate every time. Because when it's going poorly, there's all the narrative you've created about the round that's now clouding the next picture. And then it's going well. It's the future implications of playing well. The pats on the back at the bar. Geez, I shot 72 today on a windy day. That was really good, mate. Well done. You know, and again, all of that has nothing to do with the shot at hand.
It's obvious when you say it.
Yeah, but again, you've got to retrain, and you know, look, I'll always have work in golf.
Yeah,
you know, it's just it's just a game where the mental game is critical. You know, and a lot of it's understanding what the correct process is, how to work through that, and then understand how your personality gets influenced in that. You know, because obviously people are different, their history is different, their personality is different. So within the concepts that we know to be true in the mental game, then you've got to just understand what's likely to be a challenge given your history and your personality, and what's stuff that you're likely to do better.
So with that, Neale, then when so a good example sort of that I regularly come in contact with my snap hook is if I'm have hit a couple of hooks and there's say water or out of bounds down the left hand side, all of a sudden I start thinking, okay, I'm really aware of that trouble down the left hand side, and I'm struggling to get that out of my head. So is there, whether it be
first thing, acknowledge that's real. Like, yep, no, I've hit quite a few hooks. There's now trouble on the left. Like, that's real. But a touring pro with the same thing will either pick a plan that starts pretty far right and then hooks it, uses the hook to get it in play, but starting from the left-hand side of the tee box, if there's room, they'll start it pretty far right and actually try and hook it, or they'll aim at the trouble and try and cut it off that. So part of it, you got to know when you are hooking it, what's a better strategy, right? But then also with the coaching that you're going through, is you got to get some better cues on, if I do this, I'm likely to not hook it or at least block it, because every player's got to have that second serve, that ability to do something where, they can miss it one way, they may not hit a great shot, but they've not hit it left.
So is this something that can be...
That's mental, strategic, and technical.
Yeah. So is this something that just needs to be learned on the golf course, or is there something, you've got putting drills and chipping drills. Is there something that we can do away from the golf course which would strengthen that ability to be able to just be really present on each golf shot?
Oh, absolutely. Look, and we could have a whole episode on how to practice correctly, right? Because honestly, most golf practice is actually pretty crap at actually transferring what you're trying to do. You play this game that's highly varied. It's every now and again, there's a consequence, and it's fairly intense. And you think about most practice, it's pretty frequent. It's under blocked practice conditions. It's not very intense, and there's no consequence for making a mistake. So in the motor learning world, they talk about blocked, variable, and random practice. And most people practice under blocked conditions when they play a game under variable conditions. So immediately right there, even if they're feeling good about their practice under blocked conditions, it's unlikely to transfer to the game. So then they get frustrated when they're like, oh, my practice is going so well, but then I hit this random hook when I got out on the course, or I made the same mistake that I normally do. Well, because you're not practicing under the conditions that you play under. So there's a role for blocked, especially when you're learning a new skill or you're a beginner. But better players should use block practice really only for warm up and when they're taking a lesson and working on something. For better players, most of their practice should be under variable and random conditions. But that's another episode.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, and you never know your luck. You might get another episode. We'll see how things go. And it depends. It depends how much you like the hat and the ball marker as well, I think.
Well, it's a very enticing compensation package. We might have to, after the show, talk about some nice Australian Shiraz as well.
I'm sure.
Got plenty of those.
There's a few of them floating around. Don't worry. Yeah. No.
Right, because I'm living proof that if you do the right practice, you can improve quickly. Because I took a motor learning class in graduate school, learned about conditions of practice, really embraced it. And for 2 years while I was in grad school, I did these set of drills for my technique development under block practice. But for 2 years after that, I did every shot, full routine, walk in from behind the ball, new club, new shot, every shot for 2 years. And that really, I think, to accelerate my learning curve. And then it helped my practice transfer to actually the thing that I was actually practicing for, which is, to shoot lower scores in tournaments.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And bottom line, as we always talk about, you don't have to write a story on the scorecard. You've just got to put numbers down, and that's what counts. And that's where you got to know your way. It's like, I don't know, like in my era, Peter Lonard was one of the best players on the Australian tour. I remember playing in the Terry Hills Cannon Challenge one time. It was a windy day on Saturday. I thought I really played good golf. I shot 70, managed myself well, my game well. Peter shot 65, and that was the worst he was going to shoot. I was a bit deflated after the round, thinking, man, I got to get a lot better at golf, and you look at Peter's swing, it's not a classic swing, but boy, his ball control in his heyday was like really, really superior and very high quality. So again, it's part of, establishing your way, knowing your way, and being really competent at what you're good at. And I think part of our challenge at the moment, Andy Walker, is figuring out what that way needs to look like.
Yeah,
right.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know, in the journey with a touring pro, I'll ask these questions about what's your identity as a player? How do you want to play the game? What do you perceive as your identity as a player? And are you working towards that? So that'd be one thing for you to start establishing.
So how might you answer that? What might be some descriptions that people would give of the way that they are as a player? Because I actually I wouldn't quite know how to answer that at the moment.
Right. So in Mark Leishman's case, he'd be like, yeah, look, I'm quite a creative shot maker. I really play the game visually in front of the ball. Not much into working out and practice.
True.
Yeah. All right. But I'm really creative and play the game in front of the ball. So be like, okay, well, how you structure your practice and how your practice rounds and how you do all that needs to be in association with that. Whereas someone who's a bit more into taking care of their body, training and eating right, really into their technique, they need to do that the way that's good for them.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the natural, sort of some of the business thinking is always, let's look at your strengths and your weaknesses, come up with the development plans to try and improve those weaknesses and, make you more of a whole contributor.
But sometimes you can focus so much on your weaknesses that you're losing time and your ability, and you're losing your gifts. Like when I was helping Hunter Mahan, like he really struggled with his chipping sometimes. I don't know if you remember the Ryder Cup where he duffed that chip in a really intense moment. But like he could do that in practice with no one around. His chipping at times was quite weak, but he was a gifted ball striker. And you could spend all this time improving his chipping, but it would probably take away from maintaining his good ball striking. And when he hit the ball well, he didn't have to chip much. He'd regularly hit 15, 16 greens a day. And often at the tournaments where he had success, he just out ball striked everyone, where he rarely had to chip. So again, of course, you want to as complete a game as possible, but you really should be, maintaining and developing your strengths while attacking your weaknesses when you can. But it's like, it's not always about just focusing only on the weaknesses, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and that's that focusing on what it is that you do well and making sure that you don't lose that and that you keep bringing that to the table, I think is a really important point.
Yes, because like it's performance enhancement, but at a high level, when you're doing something well, there's value in performance maintenance because it can go backwards.
Yeah. Very easily in this game, that's for sure.
I often get hired when touring pros are struggling, and they were playing well a couple of years ago, but they haven't for a couple of years. So, and that's where, like a veteran player, they've had a recipe that was good at one point, but that recipe is not sustainable if they haven't played well for 12 or 18 months. So it's looking at each recipe and going, okay, well, what's sustainable and what's not? What shifted from when you played well? Because I think there's a recipe for success when you're playing well, you should wear that out. It's like grandma's lemon cake. If it tastes great, keep making it over and over again. But if you bake the cake and regularly it's not tasting good, you might want to look at the ingredients.
So then, Neale, do you think there's value? Because when you talk about your identity as a golfer, I in the mid-90s or through the 90s was the time that I was playing relatively seriously, and I always identified with Nick Faldo's golf game. I really liked the way Nick Faldo played, whereas I followed Greg Norman, but I didn't really identify with how he played the game. Do you see value in maybe doing some research around, say, how a particular player goes about their game and trying to emulate that to a certain extent?
Oh, absolutely. Role modeling is a thing in sport, golf, sport, and life. So always having someone there to look up to. like in my era, if I was ever driving it poorly, you'd go watch Greg Norman practice his driving. Like he was high launching, low spinning when no one did. And he drove the ball far and straight. Like he was one of the best drivers in golf by far. You know, if you're ever struggling with your putting rhythm, you just go watch Ian Baker Finch putt. Like his putting was unbelievable.
Yeah.
He won the New South Wales Open one year by 13 shots around the legs, like with just unbelievable putting. You know, if you watch Craig Parry's bunker game, you know, there's always someone at a tournament that did something really well. And if you just, you know, went and looked, you can learn a lot by watching someone else. So, you know, and I think as a young player, it's helpful nearly always to have someone to look up to and to emulate. And if Nick Faldo was your guy, that might be something to revisit in terms of looking at some old film, not only technically but just how he was, how he played the game, how his body language was, how he interacted with the other players and his caddy. You know, there's a lot to this. So having those role models can be very helpful.
Yeah. No, look, and with Nick Faldo, he was obviously very technical with his game, in that he broke down his swing and then rebuilt it with David Ledbetter. But I don't feel as though he was thinking technical thoughts out on the golf course. I think he played a lot by feel as well.
Absolutely. Because when I lost my tour card, I actually went to work with David Ledbetter, and it was right in the era where Nick Price and Nick Faldo David Frost, they're all in the stable there, and they were regularly at Lake Nona. And honestly, Nick Price's lessons were quite a bit more technical than Nick Faldo's. Right. Nick was actually very rhythm and feel based within that structure of good technique, whereas Nick Price was. They always thought he was like more feel based, but he was actually the one that was the real technician. Yeah. So I'd be on the range there, and I'd overhear the lessons sometimes, and often Nick Faldo would make these sounds with his noise about how he wanted the shaft to sound. Like it was very auditory and feel based. It was not that technical, whereas Nick Price was very into the camera and the positions. So again, but a part of that's you got to kind of know your way, and also know there's a Goldilocks in every way. There's too much and too little of everything.
Yep. Yeah, no, I understand that. So, one thing, Neale, that Steve and I have spoken about, and I know that Steve tried it a little bit early on in the podcast, is meditation.
Yeah. Okay.
What are your thoughts on meditation? Because I can't think of anything worse than sitting down and trying to meditate for 10, 15, 20 minutes. I've got two dogs, and I really enjoy going out and walking the dogs, and I try and be present. I try and clear my mind and be there while I'm doing it, which is sort of an active meditation. But sitting down and doing
that's actually a walking meditation. Then. So
yeah,
you are a meditator, but that's your way to do it.
Yeah. But sitting down, cross-legged on the floor, trying to visualize golf shots, positively is, I don't know.
No, you're not even trying to do that. I need to give you the background on this, Neale, okay, so that you can answer this with full disclosure. So in one of the early episodes of this show, when we went through our individual improvement plans and the activities that we were going to undertake to try and improve, I decided that I would attempt to do two things to improve my mental approach to the sport. One of those being committing to a program of meditating in the morning for 15 minutes, and another to journal. And in fact, I won't grab it now because things will fall over and it will make noises. To journal after practice sessions and rounds to try and capture positive thoughts about what had happened. We then revisited this about 2 or 3 months after starting, and I admitted to Andy Walker that I found the meditation aspect incredibly boring. And I really struggled with it. And I know for a lot of people it works. I struggled with it. The journaling I found, and maybe this is the the Aussie in me, but I found it very difficult to sit there and write nice things about myself after a round. So that's where it's coming from, because Andy Walker laughed at me and said, I knew that you weren't a meditator. And I'm glad that you've tried it, and I knew it was going to fail. So that's full disclosure on where this is coming from. But have we got it right? Have we got it wrong?
Well, I don't think there is a right or a wrong. So, like, because there's meditating for you, the human, and then there's imagery, like performance imagery for the athlete.
Mm.
So I think you kind of need to separate the two. So meditating really is for your self-development as a human, connecting with yourself and your spiritual guides, your higher self. Whereas relaxation and imagery for performance is a different thing.
So in that case, then, Neale, are you saying, so what I talked about with my two dogs going out and that's an active, more of an active form of meditation.
That would be considered a walking meditation. Yep.
Yeah, that's just
Anytime,
as valid as sitting down.
Yes. Yeah, but there might be some. Look, think about anything in life that you struggle with. There's probably a lesson there.
I'm sure there is.
So
I have no doubt of that, and I think it's related to my issue with authority as well.
Right. So I always ask this question: like, if you had a kid and they were talking to you about it, and oh, Dad, I hate meditation, but you could really see the value in it for them, what would you say to them? Would you say, oh, it's okay to quit, son? It's not for you. I know it's hard. All right. No, you keep encouraging them, like, that it's good for them, right? And you keep finding ways to create a narrative around, look, no, I get that it's challenging, but look, just keep persisting for a little bit longer, right? So, like, it's like the questions for touring pros ask them, like asking the question of, what do you need to do right now? How would you talk to your child in the same situation?
That's interesting.
I've got to tell you a funny story, actually. Sorry, I know we're now at 47 minutes, but I've got to tell you a funny story, because you're talking about what you tell your children. So not that long ago, my young fella, he's just turned 11, and he regularly does enjoy coming along to caddy for me when I'm playing in the Saturday comp down at the local club. And we had a chat on the way to a round, and I said, look, if it's necessary at any point, here's the mantra for you to give to me, which is, you can only hit any shot once. Stay in the moment, focus what you're doing. Anything that's happened before, let it go. So anyway, we got to about, what was it, Andy Walker? It was the fifth hole or something like that. And I think I'd gone double, triple, and was having a mini meltdown. And my young man at 11 years of age looked me in the eye and he went, Dad, you can only hit every shot once. Get in the moment. You got to let it go. Just forget about what's already happened. Who's parenting who at that point? That's my question.
Right. Well, maturity is not always chronological, right? Wayne Dyer used to say, well, you can live 50 years or you can live 1 year 50 times.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Such a good point. But I love a lot of the things we've talked about, but I think for me, there's two things that really stand out that I feel like I can grab a hold of and walk onto the golf course with. The first one of those is what you talked about around talking to yourself as if it was what you would expect a caddy to be saying to you, and not accepting the self-talk that you wouldn't accept from someone else saying to you. I'm probably not paraphrasing that brilliantly, but that concept.
Think about your negative self-talk. If I said to you, like, say I'm caddying for you, and I said, and you hit a bad shot, and I said, oh, mate, that was really a terrible shot. You suck at golf. Why do you even do this?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what would you think about me as a caddy? Be like, oh, what a terrible caddy. But you've given yourself permission to say that or worse pretty regularly.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I loved is the Etch-a-Sketch analogy. I just feel like that's such a really good visual way of explaining, wiping what's happened, moving forward, focusing on the next.
Because look, we know you have to play one shot at a time, but you've got to develop a system to do that.
Yeah.
So there's the pre-shot preparation. So think box, play box. So there's the active thinking about what you want to do. Then there's the crossing the line, setting up, ball position, posture, balance. And then you've got to make the motion as well as you can. Here's one point I wanted to make when we first started that conversation a little while ago was it's good to be a 10 out of 10 in terms of your clarity in the think box. But if you're a 4 out of 10 over the ball and while you swing, like it's not going to work, you know?
And that's where I feel I am.
Where do you need your 10 out of 10 the most? Is over 100%. The ball and during the motion.
100%, but that's where
ball. You've got to feel over the ball and be doing the things over the ball to give yourself the best chance to hit the shot that you've planned.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I feel that I'm struggling at the moment a little bit. The think box is fine. The play box is, I think the only way I can describe it, it's getting a bit too thinky.
Yeah, but and it sounds like stuff's jumping in and you're letting it stay marinate. You're not getting back on track fast enough.
Yeah.
Because immediately if the distraction comes in, you should be going straight back to the key swing thought that you have and the target cue that you've got. So visually look at the target that you've picked and mentally put your mind on the one cue that you know is likely to helpful for you, for that shot that you've created.
So would you back off the ball at that point and kind of?
If it's a major distraction, it's probably a back off. Minor, you should probably stay in there and resolve it quickly over the ball. But if you're like a 2 out of 10 and you try and hit it, good luck. You're good. You're not that good.
Yeah. And that, I think that was a result of a few missed putts on the weekend, to be honest.
Yeah, but also think about putting and think about short putting. It's very finite in terms of the results. They either go in or they don't.
Yeah.
But I think it's more helpful to actually create a narrative along the lines of, look, did you read the putt accurately? Did you commit to your line? Did you set up over it aligned correctly? Did you make a free trusting stroke? Did you start the ball down your line with good speed? Then did it go in or not?
Yeah.
There's a criteria for success. That's you have to value the process in terms of that criteria of success as much as the result or more. Because you can hit a pure putt on the right line and it can still miss because it can hit a bump.
Yeah.
So, or you can have terrible process. The ball can roll terribly, but it can go in. I know what's sustainable and what's not.
Yeah, sure.
So for example, so on that short putt that you really committed well to, you felt awesome over it, you rolled it right down the line. You can be disappointed it didn't go in, but the self-narrative be sort of, hey, just keep that up. That was really awesome. That's exactly the right process. Just keep that up.
See, the other part of that, I think, Steve, as well, is trying too hard and trying too hard mentally as well to stay positive. And I need to have a positive thought. Whereas sometimes I find
I would say I'd replace that with not so much a positive. There should be a positive intention of what you want to do each time, but the cues really should be more process based, right? So it might be if you're trying too hard, often your grip tension will be too high. So I'd be checking with your grip tension, and then be like, what's the cue that actually helps my stroke the best? Oh, I let the club head lead the backstroke as opposed to the grip. It might be something like that just helps the flow of the stroke, so it's better to set a positive intention of what you want to do with the outcome, but then get into the process cues that helps the motion be the best.
So much good advice in there. So much good advice.
Do you think you're talking to a trained professional here, my friend?
I think we're underpaying you.
I think so too. I think it might have to be like 3 or 4 ball markers.
Wow, that's all of our stock at the moment, actually. But anyway, that's an issue for another day.
Well,
we haven't got deeply into the merch world yet, but we're working on it.
Well, I can be bought with Penfolds Grange.
Can't we all? Can't we all? No, I think I think it's really useful because I feel like where I've been probably going slightly awry is getting too outcome focused, particularly around the putting side of things, and putting pressure on, will it go in, won't it go in? And then that's creating tension rather than going back to the process focus.
Okay, so what I'm going to recommend for you is for the next few rounds is for you to have a mental scorecard.
Yeah.
So, all right, what we're going to do is we can do it one of two ways. Rating out of 10 for the quality of the process of the shot, 10 being awesome, 0 being not great at all. Or you can do it in a yes, no, I did a good job on that routine or not, process-wise.
Yeah.
So you can decide, it doesn't matter. But once you're over the disappointment and or excitement of the shot, you need to write down at that time either a rating out of 10 or a yes, no. And your criteria for success is how well you do the process each shot and what quality of information you can get from that round to work on in the future. Of course, you want to play well and shoot a good score, but it's more than that.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point because I've been in this situation where I'm kind of on the cusp of 10.0 at the moment, or actually 10.1, but that's a story for another day. And then having opportunities to get down into single digits, which I've flirted with, but not consistently gotten into. And I think I have, as a result, been putting so much outcome pressure on rounds rather than getting out and just hitting the shots.
Yeah, but that's why often people don't finish off rounds because they start off a round with the best intentions to play process golf, be positive. That often helps, right?
Yeah.
Good strategy. But then say you're a couple over with 5 to play, then it gets into, oh, I'm doing well. Let's not mess this up. Let's just
100%.
try and get it in. Yeah. But again, it's a classic case of you had Formula A and Recipe A for the start of the round that got you playing well, but then you shifted the recipe to let's just get it in mode. And that nearly always gets too outcome focused and the tension gets too high.
Yeah. And that's exactly been what's happening. All of those things. And I have been aware, and I have, obviously I know some of these things and have been attempting to go in there and focus on process, but it's keeping the focus on process either when things are going badly or things are going well.
You're thinking of, I'm 2 over through 15. How can I get it to even?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you think if Rory McIlroy at a junior tournament was 4 under with 4 to play, do you think he was trying to hang on? No, he's trying to get to 8.
Yeah. I think
there's got to be that part of like, I'm playing well. Let's trust those feels, right?
Yeah.
But then if there's 4 reasonable pins coming in, why wouldn't you go for it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if there's 4 hard holes and 4 tough pins, play accordingly. But like I just think there's the whole part of like the strategy should be based on the difficulty of the shot and how your skills are at the time. Like if you're really playing well and they're reasonable pins, you should be really aggressive.
Yeah.
If you're not playing well and it's not going so great, you should be pretty conservative.
I think some of this stems back to that self-perception piece as well. Like, say, if you
exactly what I was thinking.
If you are, say a 5 handicapper and you're 1 under with 3 to play, you're in kind of rarefied air at that point, and you've never shot a 3 or 4 under par round, so you really are going, you know what? For me, 2 overs a cracking round. That's where that perception, that bar, that sort of internal par level sits. That you don't want to miss out on that record, and enabling yourself to recalibrate a bit to think better. I think is a challenge.
Part of this is the awareness of catching that narrative early and switching back to one task. Yeah. And on task is either preparing for the shot, doing the shot as well as you can, reviewing the shot well, or walking well to the next shot. There's always a place in golf to be present, right, and to be grounded, right? So to truly play one shot at a time, well, you've got to understand the pre-shot, the over the ball, the post-shot, and the in-between shot. So, and there's always a place to be present through that. So, and it's always in the stuff that is not helpful is switching that narrative immediately. It's not letting stay in and marinate and dominate your thinking. And that takes awareness and discipline, obviously.
Yeah, the discipline point. I kind of get the feeling like I need to get back on the meditation bandwagon here, Neale.
Well, I'd revisit it with a different perspective.
Yeah.
Like, and be like, what is it about that I didn't like? That's probably the lesson you need the most.
Sitting still.
I got busy brain. I've got stuff to do. I'm like, well, we've all got stuff to do. 15 minutes a day. Can I actually sit quietly for 15 minutes a day? Of course you can.
It's harder than you think.
No, it is. But even if you just focused on your breathing for half that time, like that would make a big difference, right? Because that would calm your nervous system down. It'll help your brain change states. So maybe you need to revisit a little bit how you're doing it and what the goal is. Because if your goal is to be a perfect meditator, I'm like, that's not it. Meditation is not about being perfect. You know, it's about learning how to calm yourself, body and mind, and learning how to listen for guidance from your higher self.
Something that you mentioned a minute or so ago, Neale, that I picked up on that I think is really interesting. I've heard of this concept before, is the post-shot routine. I mean, a lot of people talk about the pre-shot routine, and I've always had a good pre-shot routine, but the post-shot routine is something that I've never really worked on. And again, talking about coming back to whether it be acceptance of the result of the shot or maintaining a positive mindset. You know, I think that's, you know, bringing that into a post-shot routine, I think could be helpful.
Well, I think the hallmarks of a good post-shot routine are because you get feedback from the shot immediately as you hit the ball. Like whether you get immediate feedback from the quality of the strike and the start line and the flight. So that will lead to an emotional reaction, positive, neutral, or negative. Now, you're going to have that reaction no matter what. So allow that to happen, but then shift to processing. All right. And you've got to ask this question first. Did I do a good job with my process and mindset on that shot? And then if you did that, good job, tick, well done. All right. If the shot didn't work out, then you can analyze a little bit of the golf stuff. So in your case, say you overhooked an iron shot, but you saw the divot way to the right, you know, and you saw, oh, my swing path's too far to the right there, or I aim too far right. So do a rehearsal swing with a little bit better neutral alignment and feeling the swing path a little bit less to the right, a little bit more neutral. You know, that's the correction technically based on good process. And then there's the acceptance and closure of the shot. Now, if the process wasn't good, then you can give yourself a gentle or stern reminder about why process is good, important. But then after that, there has to be the acceptance and the closure. Always at the end is the acceptance and the closure. That has to happen. Like, because it's a no-brainer. If you don't do that, it's going to taint the next shot. So, absolutely. And again, like you guys care about this journey. There's certain non-negotiables in this. Like there's certain negotiables, like how you have the ball on the putting green, line, no line, that's totally negotiable. Practice stroke or not, totally negotiable. But not having acceptance and closure for a shot, that's a non-negotiable. You have to do that. It's like the planning phase. You have to have a clear plan. Like there's certain things that you just have to have in here. And you've got to be aware and disciplined with those things.
That is sensational advice. I haven't thought about it.
I wish I had to have had that conversation 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I have to say.
You know what's interesting as well, I think, is in the short amount of time that we've been pursuing this improvement plan, which is now, what are we at? About 3 months, I think, really. We started in October. The amount that I have learned, and certainly out of today's conversation, the amount that I have learned, and like you say, Andy Walker, I wish we knew this 30 years ago. It would have been just as applicable in a cricket career as it is in a golf setting, I think, absolutely, to be honest.
But also think about these as life lessons and business lessons.
They are.
The concepts are not that different, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Well, it's like the growth mindset. You know, it's like you can read the book and understand the concept. It's living the growth mindset. Yeah. And the growth mindset in golf is framing mistakes differently. Like if you've done good process, there's actually good information here if you take it. You know? And the growth mindset is like, yeah, look, I know that's a disappointing result, but this is one thing I need to keep working on and I need to keep refining. So and then when you do it well, this feeling in cue is really good and it's producing what I want. So maintain that. So no, that's a topic that we talk quite a lot about, actually, is maintaining a growth mindset and a development mindset.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. It's been, look, it's actually, I've found this has been quite an inspirational conversation as much as it's been educational. So it's, it's made me want to get back out there and try a few things on the
Well,
weekend.
I'm going to
So
give myself a pat on the back then.
yeah, I think there's a tick in every box right there. But look, we've ticked over an hour, and I'm mindful of your time as much as anything else, Neale. I have loved this conversation, and I hope anyone that's listening also gets as much out of it as what we have. I know I'll be going back to the recording and listening to it a few times and jotting some notes down to make sure that I squeeze all of the juice out of it that we possibly can.
Definitely.
I think we'd probably love to have you back at another time in the future where we can hopefully talk about having implemented some of these successes and having another list of other questions that we'd have for you. But
Yes, I think
before
that would be good. It's just to revisit, get some of the key concepts and work on them for a little while. Let's revisit. You're probably going to have to improve your compensation package a little bit.
That's true.
So
We can
now
work on that. We can work on that.
You've seen what's available now, so you're going to have to up the compensation package. But look, have your person talk to my person, and we'll see what we can get together.
So, are you thinking like a pitch mark repairer or packet of teas, Neale? Is that more what you're thinking?
I think more a club head cover.
That and a Hill of Grace. Yeah, that's pretty good Shiraz as well.
I tell you what, I'd love to catch up with you in person and actually share that bottle.
Absolutely.
At some point, I think that's got to be on the cards. But
Clarendon Hills Australis doesn't suck either.
Yeah, no, there's a few good ones out there. That's a fact. So before we wrap up, we'll say a few, like a couple of little closing messages about how everyone can get on board with the show with our Facebook page, the Missing Links Golf Show on Facebook. We've just opened up an Instagram account as well. You can find us there. But Neale, how can people find you, and would you like them to find you?
Oh, look, I've got a website that I use as basically a way to find me. It's processperformance.info. It's pretty antiquated, and one of my goals for 2024 is to update that. And there's a way there to get my cell phone if people want to contact me. I'm much better in person and over the phone than I'm not very techie. I don't do any social media except Facebook to remember friends' birthdays. So
it's useful for that.
So I'm a bit old school in terms of those things, but my real gifts are one-on-one and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, fantastic. Well, we can drop the link to your website in the show notes for the episode so people can find you if they want to reach out. But I think from us, yes, please hit that auto download button for the show. If you've enjoyed this episode, hit that button. Please leave a review. 5 stars always welcome. If you can't afford a fantastic bottle of Shiraz, then a 5-star review is the next best thing. And Neale, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really fantastic conversation. I know I've learned a lot, and there's a few things that I want to implement in the next round. So we really appreciate your time, and we can't wait to have you back on our next episode. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And look, there's some good stuff there for you guys to work on. Get to work with that, and then let's revisit and see what progress you've made.
Yeah, and I'd just like to reiterate that too, Neale. Of course, I've got 2 or 3 really great things out of this conversation. Certainly the inside out versus outside in. Going back to having a mentor or looking at a mentor, I think has got some a lot of advantages to it. So there's a couple of gold nuggets that I've got. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, and in your case, you need to differentiate between good process and technique. And when the process is good and you're still hooking it, you need better technical cues and a different way to deliver the club better.
Yeah.
So now if you're tight and scared of something and then you hook it, you've got to improve that first, right? But if you're making a free trusting swing and you're still hooking it, that's a technique issue. And that's with your coach. You've got to get together with some different and or better cues to get the path face relationship better.
Yep.
On that note, I think there's only one thing for us to do, and that is to Andy Walker rock out to our outro. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you all again next episode.
See you next week.